My name is Wendy, and today I'm going to teach you how to do some crafts that you can use to decorate your room. Now, if you've crafted with me before, you'll know that I'm a pretty frugal crafter. I like to get a good deal. I don't like to spend a lot of money, but I also like to use items that I have around my house. So we will be incorporating all of those kinds of things into our crafts today. So the first craft that we're going to do is a flip-flop wreath. Now, I got my flip-flops at the dollar store. So you need 4 pairs of flip-flops, and also you either need a cardboard square, and I'll show you one that I made, and I just cut the cardboard out of the back of one of those spiral bound notebooks. And if you don't want to do that, the one I'm going to make with you today, I'm using a foam ring that, again, I got at the dollar store. So it didn't cost me very much. And then I'm going to embellish this with some flowers, some fake flowers. Again, I bought these bunches of flowers at the dollar store. So if you didn't want to alternate your flowers, you could get by with just one bunch here. So that and a hot glue gun are all we're going to need to crafty today. You can also at the end add a little ribbon, and that will be a way for you to hang up your flip-flop wreath. But you can use, again, anything that you have laying around the house. It could be a fancy ribbon, it could be yarn, a piece of twine. You know, use what you have. So, first of all, I'm going to show you the one that I made before. So, this flip-flop wreath I made for my daughter's bedroom. She kind of has an ocean theme going on in there. And this one I used a square piece of cardboard on the back of. So, I just have this, it's a 6-inch square. And you can also use a box. If you have any boxes like that come from Amazon or anything, you cut your square out of the box if you want something a little sturdier than the back of the notebook. And I put it in the diamond shape and then laid out my flip-flops in a pattern all the way around. And then because this one doesn't have an opening because you'd be able to see the cardboard through it, I decided to fill in that center part with flowers, and I also embellished each of the toes of the wreath with a flower as well. And then I got some cute ribbon to hang it, and then I just have a little hanger that's an over-the-door hanger, which is how we're hanging it up in her room. The one we're going to make together, we're going to use this foam wreath, again, that I got from the dollar store. So if I add up what I would spend for this craft, I have $4 in flip-flops, the wreath makes $5, 1 or 2 bunches of flowers, $6 or $7 at the most. So less than $10, and you can have your flip-flop wreath. So I have already laid out my flip-flops in a pattern. So I chose to get 4 different patterns of flip-flops. And I'm going to start with this one that has the anchors on it. And first of all, I'm just going to lay these out in the pattern I want so that I have the spacing that I want for the flip-flops. And that way I can adjust as needed. And once they're laid out, then it's super easy to just go ahead and go in and put glue underneath there. Now, if you don't like the fact that, you know, right now I'm able to see a little bit of the green wreath behind there, if you don't want to see that green wreath, you could go ahead and take some yarn and put a little bit of like Elmer's glue or hot glue, and you could wrap yarn all the way around the wreath, and then you could have that background be whatever color that you wanted it to be. Or another thing you could do is you could fill in the in-between spots with flowers, and then you wouldn't see that green. So you've got lots of different options. Be creative. So I kind of have my flip-flops laid out here the way that I want, and I'm going to grab my hot glue gun, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a big old glob of glue there. Stick that one down. get a glob of glue on underneath this one. I'd be generous with your glue. You do want them to be on there pretty securely. And this isn't going to take super long. All right. I'm already halfway done. Now, I know we might be getting to the time of year where flip-flops might be a little harder to find, but I do find that places like Old Navy will often have like discount sales too. So if you're having a hard time finding these in the dollar store, check out some of the clothing stores that might be having their discount sales. Or maybe you've got some older pairs of flip-flops, just kind of clean them up a little bit and you're like, oh, next year I'm going to get new ones, so I'm going to use these for my crafty this year. So again, I'm a big fan of using whatever you have around the house. And also I like that because it is good for the environment. You're not making new things or making trash. You're taking old things and reusing them in a new way. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and take my flowers, and I think I'm gonna need to grab another glue stick here. And I'm gonna just put those in between the flip-flops, and then I won't see the green on mine. So we're gonna go ahead and just put some nice hot glue there. And again, I'm gonna be pretty generous with it. I really want it to stick well. And I'm choosing to alternate the flowers that I picked out to go with this. So I'm gonna do a white one there, and the next one will be yellow. But again, you could choose to do whatever you want here. This is just what I am doing. Come on, hot glue gun. Doesn't want to go through there. All right. Okay, and I will continue all the way around here. And I'm not going to make you watch me do all of that. So I'll come back in just a second and I will show you the finished wreath, and then I will talk to you about our next project. All right, so I've put all of my flowers in between all of the flip-flops, and then I'm going to add one more little flower embellishment just on that top toe of the flip-flop, just because I like the way that that looks. And then I will show you what it looks like. And lucky for me, I have 4 daughters, and so I have another daughter that wanted a flip-flop wreath. So this one is going to go in Natalie's room. Make sure that's sticking on there good. Cool for just a second. All right. And there we have our flip-flop wreath. All right, friends, so the next craft that I'm going to show you, you will need some tape or glue. You'll need either some cardboard where you can cut out a letter shape out of it, or I shop at some of the craft stores and just get some of the pre-made monogram letters. It could be made out of wood, it could be made out of the paper mache, it could be made out of cardboard, it can be more flat, or it can have a little depth to it like it's 3D. So you need tape or glue, one of those monogram letters, or create your own. And again, I'm a big fan of using those back covers of the spiral bound notebooks, so you could take the time to trace out a letter like the first initial of your name. Or if you want to make it for a gift for someone for their house, you could make the first initial of their last name, and some yarn. So whatever color of yarn you want to use, or you can use multiple colors, and I will show you how to do that. And again, there will be some ways that you can embellish it with things you have around the house, or you don't have to. You can just leave the monogram letter the way it is. For this yarn wrapped monogram craft, I am going to be doing a letter N for my daughter Natalie again. We're redoing her room, so she's going to be the lucky recipient of the crafts that I'm making for this video. But I do have one to show you that's already completed. In addition to working for KDL, I'm also a school librarian, and so I'm working on some decorations for one of my school libraries, and I'm going to spell out the word read, but I've already done the R, and this was made on a wood block letter, and then I just wrapped the yarn, and I chose to keep this one all one color. And then I'm going to add, I have some fun little reading buttons, and I am still trying to decide what I want to put where, if I want just one up in the corner or one at each of the bottom edges here as well. But I like these. They look kind of warm and cozy and homey, so I like this yarn wrapped look. So to start, Natalie's room has a lot of blues in it, so I'm going to start with a blue color. And I will tell you something I learned, that you'll have to decide what's easiest for you, but sometimes in some of the areas, it was easier for me to just cut a long piece of string than trying to keep it you know, on the ball. So I'm going to try it on the ball here, but if it starts to get all tangly, we're going to switch it up. So I'm just going to take a piece of duct tape, and on the back side of the letter, I'm just going to tape down that end of the yarn, and then I'm just going to start wrapping it, and I'm going to wrap kind of a couple of layers here. Now this is a nice 3D letter. If you are using the cardboard, like from the back of a notebook, and you cut out your own letter, you could not take your time to wrap this as neatly as I'm doing the first time around. So I'm trying to keep my lines kind of nice and even. And I am doing a couple of layers so that you don't see through the bottom of this here. But if you do have that flatter cardboard, you could kind of start out and be kind of a messy wrapper and just really get yarn all over it, wrapping it any which way just to kind of make it a little puffier. And then you can go back over it and try and make these smoother lines. So I'm going to try and get a little bit of this going here and then show you, if you want to switch colors, it's super easy. You could, you know, make stripes, you could make it look more like an ombre look. I'm going to do, I think, 2 or 3 different colors here. We'll see how I feel as I'm going, but we're going to use this bright blue for the bottom part here. And then when I get to the thicker part of the letter, I'm going to switch the color. I have seen people who have put a little bit of glue along the letter as their, you know, just white glue, or that Aleene's tacky glue is really nice because it's super sticky. I found though that pretty much if I was wrapping tightly, that the tape was enough to hold the yarn in place. So we're almost up to that part where the letter is going to get thicker. And I will say, you know, each letter is going to have its own unique way that you're going to have to wrap it. You'll have to figure out, you know, the best way to do that. I know on that R, I had that big circle part in the middle, and that's where I found I really needed to cut the yarn and just have, you know, strips of yarn and not have it attached to the ball, because I needed to get it in and out of that little circle part in the top of the R. But I think on this N, I probably can just leave the yarn on the ball. So we are almost there. A couple more wraps and we will switch colors here. And again, as I'm getting up into this tighter area, I'm finding that, you know, maybe at some point in time I'm going to have to cut this yarn and use a smaller piece that I can slip in there easier. Alright, we're almost there. Alright, I'm just going to wrap a couple more times. I've got a couple of spaces I need to fill in here. I don't always like to make you wait and watch me do the whole thing, but I'm pretty close here, so. And if you are watching this at home and you're doing it along with me, then feel free, pause the video, do this part, and then start it back up again when you're ready for the next part. All right, that's looking pretty good, I think. Really get it uptight in there. Now, if you're worried about the color showing through, again, something else you could do to your cardboard is paint it ahead of time and let it dry. And then if a little bit shows through and it's kind of the same colors as what you've been using, then it won't really matter if it peaks. You see a little peak of the cardboard through there. And another thing that's kind of nice is if you've done a couple of layers here, you can go back and kind of shift the yarn around with your finger a little bit and kind of cover up some of those spaces that way. All right, so I'm going to cut this yarn because I'm going to switch colors. And I'm going to go ahead and tape down the end and make sure that it's nice and tight so that my wrapped yarn doesn't get loose. And again, I'm putting my tape on the back side. If you wrap well enough, you might not see it, but as a just in case, I'm always going to tape it on the back side. All right, so I think now that I'm going to go ahead and switch colors. You see, I'm noticing that the bottom here, like my yarn is sliding off the bottom just a little bit, so you're going to need to leave it just a little bit above the edge there so that doesn't happen. All right, and then I'm going to start with this white yarn. And you can tell this is a new one I haven't used before. Near the end here. There we go. All right, so again, just going to tape this to the back, and I'm going to switch colors. Now, if you were doing kind of more of that where you want like a color grading, you could go ahead and use like a different color, different shade in the same color family that you're using, or not. Just totally change it up and use something, a fun color that really just pops out there. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one, and I want to make sure that I don't have a gap here, so I am going to, on my end, wrap a little bit in that in-between space and kind of overlap the yarn a little bit there so that there's not this big gap, and then I will continue up the letter. And like I said, it might take a little bit to figure out, each letter is going to be different how you're going to do this. And letters that have like those little spaces in the middle like the R did. And I'm finding like with this N, I want this first line to be really straight, so I may go ahead and just tape this where I want it so that it doesn't move. And then I've got my starting line there. And then we'll just keep wrapping. And again, for this, I'm not going to make you watch me do this whole wrapping, so I will come back in a second and I will show you the finished letter and some ways you can embellish it when you're done. All right, so now I have finished wrapping Natalie's letter N, and I know if you're doing like more of a 3D one, if you didn't get like a wooden block that was already painted, like I have one here I got off a discount bin at Michael's for $1. So this one's already painted white, so maybe that's okay with you if that shows through. But there are a couple of things you can do to cover up these ends. Now, if you want them to stand up, you will not want to put something on the bottom. You could paint it as long as it's still flat. But another thing you could do is get strips of the yarn color that you used and glue them onto those ends so you have that yarn look all the way around. But on the bottom part, if you want it to stand up, I wouldn't do the yarn. I would probably paint it, or maybe you don't care because it's going to be sitting up and you won't even see it. So one thing I did also find that was helpful as I was doing this is that when you get to those ends, if you have a hot glue gun, putting just a little strip of hot glue around there to wrap like that final piece of yarn around there is helpful to keep it from sliding off, as we saw earlier where I had a few little strings dangling down there. So that can be helpful to keep things in place the way you want them. And actually that is what I also chose to do on the back side for those final little strips. Instead of putting a piece of tape, I used hot glue and just glued the little strip here. Again, you can change colors on these as often as you want, or not at all if you want it just a solid color. The last thing that you can do is we can embellish it. Now, when we did our flip-flop wreath, we embellished with flowers. You can use anything you have, though. If you did a flip-flop wreath and you wanted to find little letters to spell out your name, you could put those on the in-between. If you're like a Star Wars fan and you have like little minifigures or something, you could put those in there. Same for this. I am going to go ahead and do a flower because my daughter Natalie, her middle name is Rose, and so I have a little white rose here. So I'm just going to put this little white rose at the top of here and kind of fancy up my flower. And remember, on my R that I did for Read, that I'm going to spell out for school, I used like little buttons that I have that have sayings about like just one more chapter, I love books. So it kind of relates to what, you know, I'm going to eventually spell out with all of those letters. So there are a lot of different options you can do. You don't always have to use flowers. So just to put that out there for people who are watching it and are like, well, I'm not really a flower kind of a person. Well, you can make it unique to you. And I don't know, now that I'm looking at this, I think I'm going to flip my N over, maybe put this white flower up on the blue part where it pops out a little more. I think I like that better. Because it's an N, I can do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my hot glue gun. This for me is a crafty staple because I use it a lot in my crafting. So there's my little letter N for Natalie's room. And I don't know, I may end up putting a little something here as well if I had a little smaller embellishment. Or to do like a line of buttons. Lots of different options, my friends. So I hope that you've enjoyed this craft. And I do have one more craft to show you. And we are going to make some chandeliers out of yarn. Now I have to warn you, this next craft is very messy. So please, please, please make sure that you have a grown-up's permission to do it. Make sure that you cover your workspace. It would be a good one to even do outside. Just lay down some newspapers. Even for yourself, we're going to be using glue, a lot of glue for this one. And you're going to be touching it a lot with your hands. And so if you have like an art apron or something, or I even saw someone take a garbage bag and kind of cut a hole in the bottom of it and a couple holes in the sides and just wear a garbage bag over the top of them so that they didn't get all messy doing this craft. It does turn out super cool, but I do not want to hear from parents that they're very upset that you did this messy craft without their permission. So please make sure you have a grown-up's permission to do this next one. And you will need yarn, you will need a balloon or a beach ball, and you will need some Elmer's glue. One little like school size bottle is plenty. As an option to make what we're going to do a little bit thicker, and I kind of prefer it this way, some cornstarch, which is probably something that you have in your pantry for cooking, but it is also going to be helpful for this project. If you don't have cornstarch, no worries, you do not have to use it. So the third ingredient we need to make our mixture to make the yarn chandelier is water. So you for sure need some Elmer's glue, maybe some cornstarch, water, a balloon or a beach ball, and some yarn. And when I get everything all set up and covered up so that we can do this messy craft, I will be right back and show you how to make those yarn chandeliers. All right, friends, so now I'm all set. I've got my workspace covered in newspaper. I've got myself covered with an art apron. And now we're going to go ahead and make the solution that we're going to have to drag our yarn through in order to wrap it around either our balloon or our beach ball to make our yarn chandelier. So, I hope you're ready to get messy. So the first thing that we need is Elmer's glue, and again, if you have just like the school size bottle, about half of that bottle is enough to do one yarn chandelier. Now, I've been making a lot of these, so I bought an extra big bottle of Elmer's glue, and I just poured an amount that's equivalent to about half of the bottle of Elmer's school size bottle of Elmer's glue into the bowl. So I already have that in my bowls here. Now I found these nice paper plates that are actually almost a little bit like a bowl. This works really well, but really any bowl will be fine. This is just Elmer's glue, cornstarch, and water. So when you're done, you can just wash it out, and I would recommend doing that right away. It'll be easier than if you let it dry in there. Or in my case, since I have a disposable item, I can just go ahead when I'm done and just throw the whole thing away. So I've got my glue in there. I have tried this craft 2 different ways, and I actually am using a combination of both of those because I thought one had too much cornstarch in it and the other one didn't have any, and that was a little bit flimsier. And I can kind of show you what I made before and why I've kind of modified it. So the first one that I made with green yarn, and this one had like 1/3 of a cup of cornstarch in there, and that half a bottle of Elmer's glue, and then about 1/3 of a cup of water. And now this is super sturdy. The downside to this one is that a lot of that cornstarch and glue residue really stuck to my chandelier. And so I can still see kind of it crusted around there. Now, one of my daughters suggested, well, Mom, if you still wanted it green, you could just go back and, spray paint over this, which I might do, because I really do like the way that this one turned out. But it is not quite the same color because it's still coated and all that. So this is super stiff. And I liked that about this one because I did another one, and you can do this option too, where I did equal parts Elmer's glue and water and no cornstarch. Now this one is a lot more squishy. It's a lot lighter weight. The beauty of this one is that it dried, and I still see like the original color of my yarn. So don't worry if you don't have the cornstarch. I just personally preferred it that way, and it did make it a little stiffer. And I will tell you, I'm going to show you this one because this was one of my trial ones. As we're wrapping, make sure you keep your yarn tight because this side turned out beautifully. And this side, I didn't have the yarn as tight, and it's not puffing out and making that nice round shape. So I wish the whole thing looked like this one, this side. But again, you can use either one. I found also that the cornstarch made the mixture a little bit thicker, and it made it easier for me to wrap the yarn around and have it stay where I put it, which is, I think, part of the problem that I had with this one is if you do only use glue and water, it's just a little bit slipperier. And I had really wished that I had somebody with me that I could have been working on this project together, because I think if I could have had another set of hands, it would have made it easier. So if you're doing this project with a friend, go ahead and just use the equal parts glue and water, and then you can just help each other do your chandeliers. And that would have been easier for me because I just found that the yarn kept slipping when I was trying to do it all by myself. Some of the other people's videos that I followed that made these crafts, some of them took the balloon or the beach ball and first they coated it in petroleum jelly. I didn't find that necessary, but it is something you can do, especially if you're using a beach ball and you're concerned that it won't come off of your beach ball when we're done. Balloons, we're going to end up popping them after this has dried and it's not too hard to get it out of the center of your chandelier. So let's get started. So I've got my glue already, and I am going to just put a 1/4 cup of cornstarch in with the glue. And then I'm going to start with a 1/4 cup of water and stir it all up together. I want it to be pretty loose, but again, with the cornstarch, I'm going to want it to also have a little bit of thickness to it too. I know that probably sounds confusing, and so, you know, I think it's just going to take a little bit of experimenting. So I'll see here once I've stirred this one up if I think a little bit more, because this with the cornstarch makes it a little bit more like paper mache if you've ever worked with paper mache before. So I'm just using a chopstick here, stirring it up, trying to get the lumps out, because especially with that cornstarch in there, you're going to have a little bit lumpy, and I want to make sure it's all mixed in so I don't have some parts of it that are thicker than others. And that is looking actually pretty good to me. So I think that that's a good combo. Half a bottle of Elmer's glue, 1/4 cup of cornstarch, and about a 1/4 cup of water. All right. So I'm going to blow up a balloon, and that's going to be that's going to form the shape of our chandelier. And you can blow them up as big or as small as you want. And actually, I think it's kind of cool if you end up making a few of these to have, if you made like 3, to have a small, medium, and a large size. So we're going to blow this one up here, and I'm going to make this one, I think, kind of small, just so I can kind of show you the process of it. And so that's good. All right, I'm going to make a little tiny guy out of this one. All right, so I've got my balloon, and now I'm going to grab my yarn, and I think I'm going to make this one white, which then again, white's a nice color because it's white glue and it won't show through as much. So if you are doing this project alone, especially, although eventually you will need to have some place to hang this to let it dry, I find it's helpful to hang it. Now, I'm just going to very carefully hang it from my chandelier light that's hanging down over my kitchen island. Kind of want you to still be able to see my face while I'm doing this. All right, so there's my little balloon, and I have the whole thing attached to my yarn. Now, eventually what I'm going to want to do is get a bunch of this yarn coated in this glue solution. But obviously from hanging it up there, the first little bit is not going to be able to reach down into my bowl. So this is where it gets messy, my friends. So I'm going to coat a bunch of this yarn, and as I go, I'm going to keep sticking yarn in this bowl and coating it in this glue solution. But I am going to take some of the glue solution and just start running it, getting it on my fingers and running it down this part of the string that I can't get into the bowl. Now, as you go, the yarn that you have been able to soak in the bowl, you're going to still want to continue to like strip it off so it's not clumpy. I think that's also something on that first one that I didn't do quite as well as I should have. But now we're just going to start wrapping the yarn around the balloon. And you do kind of want it to crisscross because those little lines are going to help to make your chandelier more stable. So I don't want all of my yarn lines to go up and down, but I got to start making a shape here. So, all right, make sure you're stripping the glue off of here as you go. And again, with a partner, this would be so much easier because that person could help hold the balloon, and you can make sure you're getting your string tight. But you can do it by yourself. It's not impossible. But I don't know. I always think it's more fun to do with a friend anyway. All right, so there is no set amount of times you need to wrap your balloon. Pretty much you want, if you want more light to show through it, then you will wrap it fewer times. This is where it gets tricky, where you're trying to trim off that extra glue. There we go. Kind of figure out your own technique for making this work for you. But the more you wrap it, the denser it's going to be. So you just wrap it till it's the way that you want it to look. Get some more of this yarn in the glue here. So I told you, it's messy, right? I'm getting glue all over my arm, and it's splattering on my counter. So again, please, please, please make sure that you have covered your area well. And even when it's going to be hanging to dry, I found like it will drip. So you want to leave whatever you're, underneath where you're hanging it to dry, you want something underneath there too, because it's going to, all that, any excess that's going to come off, it will drip and it will land underneath wherever you are storing your chandelier to dry. All right. I'm going to go ahead and finish this one, but I'm not going to make you watch me do that. And then I will come back and show you how to finish it after it's had a chance to dry. You do need to leave them hanging to dry for about 24 hours. And after they've dried and we pop the balloon and get it out of there, it's pretty much ready to hang. Now I have seen people that did it with a beach ball, and I am also going to make one like that as well, so I'll show you that too. But so I blew up the beach ball. I made sure I left the little part where you blow it up popped up, because with a balloon we're just going to poke it and pop it and it's going to shrink down. With this, we don't really want to do that with our beach ball because we might want to use it again. So you want to be able to get to that little tab so you can pull it up and release the air out of it. I saw some people do some really clever things with this. If you're someone who actually wants to put like a light bulb fixture down through it, you can like trace out a line to leave a hole at the top to put your light bulb fixture down through once your chandelier has dried. And so you'll only be kind of like wrapping around the sides. And you can, go ahead and do the whole bottom and hang it like we did before. But you could also leave the bottom open. And again, I would trace a line where you want that so you make sure that you don't put any yarn there. And then if you did have a light hanging down through it, that light would shine out more out the hole. Again, you can wrap these as many times as you want. Make the yarn as dense as you want. If you really want just little peaks of light to come through, you can just keep wrapping. Or if you want it a little bit more open like the ones that I showed you, then you can wrap it fewer times. So you can already see as I'm talking to you that there's some dripping going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish these up, and then I will come back and show you how to get your balloon or your beach ball out of the center of it. All right, so now we've given these yarn chandeliers about 24 hours to dry, and I did want to show you that I went back over the original blue one I showed you where I'm like, oh, I'm not super happy with how this one turned out. I didn't wrap it tight enough, and so I ended up blowing up a balloon again, putting it inside, and then I wrapped more yarn around it, and I think I've fixed my problem. I really like how it looks now. So that is the one from earlier. And then when I showed you one of my original ones, also I showed you that I maybe made the mixture a little bit too thick, and then it was kind of still, she had a white coating on the outside of the green yarn, and my daughter had suggested maybe I could spray paint it. So I did attempt to do that. I put it inside of a plastic bag and I spray painted it, and it seems to have turned out really well. So again, if you have some little mistakes that happen with your creations, there might be some solutions. Or if you end up making your chandelier and you're like, oh, there's something I wish I would have wrapped it more, I wish I would have wrapped it a little tighter, you can go back over it and kind of fix that up. So I'm going to show you what to do now with the ones that still have maybe a balloon inside of them. And so I've got this white one here, and I'm just going to take a pin and poke a hole in it. And you can hear it just kind of sucks in on itself out of there. It gets all dried up. And I'm just going to try and peel it up from the bottom here a little bit and get it out of here. And then eventually I will snip off the top knot, and you can work its way out that way and get the balloon out of there. It's kind of sticking on the bottom a little bit here. It's not a really big deal because it will come out eventually as you play with it. And you can see it's nice and stiff. So I'm really happy with that new mixture too, where I put about a 1/4 cup of the cornstarch in there. It's still pretty stiff, but not as thick as with this one where I ended up with the white residue all over it. So you'll just have to play with it a little bit, but eventually you'll get this balloon right out of the center there. And it's really stuck on the bottom here, but as I'm pushing on it, it comes right off. Use my defusel glue a little bit. So we'll get that out of there in a minute. I thought also, I've got this one over here. that one just shrunk right up there. And so then I'm just gonna cut the balloon here and get a little bit of the knot out here. You can, if you need to, you can even grab a pair of tweezers if you need to get inside there and really kind of tug on that balloon. Sometimes I've had to cut them again. I still see the little knot right here, but it will come eventually right out. And again, like I said, I still have that little knot in there, so I'm going to cut my balloon again. And then I should be able to get the rest of this out of here. That one came out a little easier. I'll play with this one here a little bit later. Then I also have the one I made with the beach ball, and with the beach ball, we're just going to go ahead and open up that little valve at the top of it and slowly release the air out of that. And then I'll have another one here. I was thinking with these that too, another cool thing you could do with them is you could almost make like a solar system with them in your, hanging from your bedroom ceiling if you use different colors of yarn and used different sizes of balloons, and you could kind of make little planets, and that'd be kind of cool. And I was also, as I was spray painting this one, I thought, if you wanted it to be a little bit sparkly, there is like a spray glitter that you can get that might also be really cool. So I will keep working on these and getting all of the parts out of there. But that completes our craft program. So I thought I'd just review. I did end up embellishing my yarn craft, or my letter N, that I did for my daughter Natalie. And I found that I had a few of these little sparkly flowers that I added on to there. And also just a review of the flip-flop wreath that we made. And Natalie was excited about it. She's already had it hanging on her bedroom door, so I had to go grab it to finish up our video. If you do these crafts and you take any pictures and you're going to post them to social media, if you could tag us on Instagram at Kent District Library, all one word. We'd really love to see what you've created, and I hope that we'll get to crafty together again soon.